People aren't just their crimes. People are able to rehabilitate. People are able to get better. There was an Australian documentary, but it was like 44 minutes long, so I don't know whether we'll be able to watch a lot of it. But if we get a chance and we get through a lot of the other stuff that we have, we'll get into it. But we'll be looking at like the privatization of rehab. What kind of stuff do you guys reckon goes into rehab to effectively rehabilitate someone? What do you think? Do you think that just keeping them off the drugs, like having them detox for a little bit and then like having them maybe do some psychotherapy and shit, do you think that's effective, or do you think that there's more that goes into it? I have researched this topic a little bit. I won't say that I'm like the most knowledgeable on this subject. There are definitely people out there that are a lot more knowledgeable, work a lot more directly with, you know, in these sort of programs and have a lot more in-depth knowledge about how rehab work and what sort of systems do work. But I do want to hear from like people who don't necessarily have a background in criminal law and haven't done law or like studied alternative legal remedies for the justice system. Kind of want to hear what people think is, you know, a good starting place, or like what kind of factors go into rehabilitation. I'll obviously give my opinion as to what I think goes into rehabilitation. Again, I'm not like the most expert in all, you know, out of all the experts, there is definitely a lot more people who are more knowledgeable than I am. But just like based on my own research about particularly the drug court, this is like kind of where my opinion comes from. Also having interacted with criminals through my old job where I used to work as a legal assistant in the criminal I worked in one only criminal law firm, or like predominantly criminal law firm, and I worked in a generalized law firm in the criminal department. So I've worked predominantly in criminal law and a little bit in admin, not admin law, but just like administrative stuff like reception and shit. But a lot of my like hands-on knowledge from law comes from the criminal sector, and I've spoken to criminals, I've spoken to people in prison, I've spoken to pedophiles, drug addicts, murderers, you know, a whole range, drug traffickers, like the whole range of shit. I've spoken to people who, you know, sort of tell you about their life story and you're like, okay, I can see how you ended up here and I can see how the system let you down. So I kind of have an understanding about, one, coming from a lower socioeconomic background, and two, coming from a single parent household, which is where a lot of these people who do end up in the criminal justice system do come from a broken home, come from violent homes, come from, you know, parents that are constantly cycling through new relationships. Abuse is, you know, exponentially higher between step parents and, you know, their non-biological children than there is between parents and their biological children. Not to say that biological parents do not abuse their children. They absolutely do. There are many, many such cases of that happening, but I think like the statistics of probability go up exponentially when there's a step parent involved. So, you know, these are the kind of backgrounds that people come from, and I have a lot of empathy. I went to school with people who had, you know, trouble at home, had, again, violence at home, had, you know, abusive dads and things like that. And I've seen people go down that path, and I've seen them walk down that path, and I have, I guess, a level of insight and appreciation for, you know, the fact that I was, you know, afforded such, you know, some opportunities that allowed me to not go down that path. But I do remember, you know, sort of speaking to some of the people that I, you know, worked with directly as a part of my job, you know, even girls that were my age, and thinking like, you know, one different decision and maybe the roles could be reversed for us. So I want to start off with this Vice documentary that kind of looks at some of the more expensive, fancy rehabilitation centers, and dude, this opening scene fucking had me in stitches, dude.
How did you know that rehab was right for you?
Because I was strung out on heroin.
I think that rehab...
Like, what a good fucking answer, dude. I'm sorry, like, I don't know if you're meant to laugh, but like, it's just yeah, so how do you, what made you decide rehab? I was heavily addicted to drugs. That's so
Rehab
good.
has become accepted as the best and most wonderful thing you can do for somebody. Go to rehab, especially expensive rehabs, because that should be the best, because it's so expensive. And of course it isn't so.
Are poor people just straight up fucked?
No, you might be better off. I think rich people are straight up fucked.
Are you gonna do this mentally when you're out in the real world?
Probably not.
You know how hard it is to find a psychiatrist that's just not going to pass out psych meds like they're Pez candy? It's almost next to impossible to find that. It's like going to a barber shop and saying, you know, I want to find a guy at a barber shop who doesn't cut hair.
We are falling behind. If you look at any other field of medicine, they are far advanced than addiction medicine.
She said that Brandon was not in any danger, he was safe, you know, that the nurse is monitoring the levels, and she dies the next day.
In the beginning, there was alcohol, and then there were alcoholics. From
Feels a
then
bit
on,
loud.
we've been trying to cure addiction with all kinds of crazy methods. From solitary confinement.
Background music is such a clown wall vibe. Yeah, dude. It is a little bit. I do appreciate juxtaposition in that way. Convicts who reflect on their action and prove themselves in their own time away from society. If we start arguing for prison as a punishment, which I realize is a common idea, then any crime's punishment is completely subjective by the individual. Some people consider littering as unforgivable, and some consider all felonies as permissible if you had a bad upbringing. Right. So you gotta find balance somehow. Lithium in melon water makes smart drug addicts. Hello.
Confinement and electroshock therapy to sterilization and lobotomy. It wasn't until the 30s that we found something that kind of worked, and that was Alcoholics Anonymous, created by a former atheist and drunk named Bill W. In the 50s, a couple of doctors adopted AA's religious-inspired 12 steps and mixed it with inpatient therapy, and the first modern-day rehab program was born. Since then, inpatient treatment has turned into a $35 billion industry, charging tens of thousands of dollars per person. This treatment model has become seen as the gold standard thanks to its glamorization in popular culture by shows like Intervention and Celebrity Rehab. But is it really worth the money? Drug abuse is on the rise in the U.S., creating a dire need for effective treatment. We took a trip to what is known as Rehab Riviera in Malibu, California, the hotbed of the country's most elite non-hospital rehab centers, to find out what these places have to offer.
In order to justify...
I think it should be public knowledge for some crimes and stuff, but other ones, it's like you're already going to be limited by, like, you know, your jobs. Like, it's the most jobs, or like not most jobs, but a lot of jobs will require like a criminal history check, and that could be like problematic for you. You can't get like blue cards and stuff, and I think you can't get a blue card if it's just if you have like sex offenses. Maybe you can still do it if you have like other kind of offenses. But yeah, AA proof Jesus worked better than a lobotomy. It makes it difficult to come in with all their benefits for criminals or businesses not wanting the thieves in their stores in charge of inventories. What are the what benefits for criminals are you talking about?
The huge charges from $30,000 to $90,000 a month for rehab, they couldn't very well just say, we're going to give you the same thing you can get for free in a church basement. And they were in competition with each other. So they became like spas, as they are today. They just added things that they could say was part of their program without any evidence whatsoever that any of these things did anything.
This is Dr. Lance Mdotis. He's an expert and critic of the rehab industry who worked for years as the director of substance abuse treatment at Harvard University's McLean Hospital.
Remember the Muppets used to do that? The famous cases we hear about, the celebrities who go in and out of these expensive Malibu places, they go in 8, 9 times, and we all blame them. We say, what's the matter with these people? They can't stay with the program. No one says maybe the treatment is lousy, which it is, of course. It just won't work for them.
Which is interesting because I have a dietitian for like weight gain stuff. It's not like a rehab thing, but she did say something interesting to me about like my eating plan. And she was like after our first session, we did the eating plan. She's like, you know, we'll come back and we'll assess whether this is working, and like, you know, if it's not working for you, like don't feel like it's your fault, like you're not doing good enough. No, it's not an Ozempic diet. I'm trying to gain weight. They're like, you know, she's like, don't necessarily feel like it's your fault that the plan isn't working. It just means that we need to get a better plan. And I think like the same could be said for rehab in this instance, that like it's not necessarily that, you know, the plan or that the person is fucking up the rehab. It's that the rehab is, you know, kind of fucking up the person by not having like a good plan for them that works for them. What a rehab where we turn people into giant centipede work. Dude, not like the fucking movie, right?
We're here at Cliffside, Malibu, one of the nation's top rehab centers. Apparently Lindsay Lohan went here. We're going to talk to the founder, Richard Tate, about how the rich recover from their addictions.
So this is our fruit orchard, Philly. 70
hey,
trees, all organic.
Have a good one. You too. You too. Thanks for popping by. Exactly like the movie, get drugs to the front centipede, see what effects it has on the rest of the body. Stop. I've like spent so long trying to like remove that image of that fucking movie from my head. It's like the fucking one man, one jar video. But it's just burned in there. I can never remove that.
This was actually my room when I lived here. hence the raffia walls. I think this is just bitching, right? I think it's just cool. Very nice, guys. Very nice.
This is just a glorified hotel experience.
Single room. Okay.
This is not
The
rehab.
cost is $73,000 a month.
$73,000 a month.
What was my part in this? Right? And therapy
Hey, hi, Dave.
is uncovering what the...
I think it gives you a very honest insight into how not everybody feels about it, but like how a lot of people feel about it. You know what I mean? I think it gives like, it's pretty real in a lot of ways. I think that's why BoJack Horseman was so successful. Malibu is a vacation for rich people. 12-step works. It works if you work it. Yeah, absolutely. So I think Dave said that as well. 12-step is the best treatment. It's a support group. If it's a support group, it's not being done right. For sure. Was it you, Dave, that was saying stuff about 12-step? Yeah, it was. Hell yeah. 12-step works when they're done 12-step way, i.e. a recovered addict working with another addict without charge. Money ruins it. That's where it's coming from, a diehard capitalist. Right, absolutely. Again, commoditizing people like this means that there is an incentive to keep people like this. Very sleazy. In a rich man's house, there is no place to spit but his face. Diogenes. BoJack was successful because he's hot. Stomp. I think people deserve to know if they're working with criminals or inviting them into their home. Then you can ask people. You can just ask people, you know? How do we deal with criminals? Hey, E. Johnson, how you doing? I think it's a little bit close-minded, front burner, where you're coming from on all this stuff. Yeah, I do appreciate that it's good to know if you're like working with a criminal and stuff like that, but people aren't just their crimes. People are able to rehabilitate, people are able to get better, and that's what this conversation is about, is how do we make sure that there is more of that, and how do we make sure that that is more effective. I think like trying to hold people to account for something that they did in their past and always hold them to that standard and treat them as if they're forever going to be that person is not productive for a criminal, and it's not productive for society. It is not productive. It is fine. I agree. I agree that it's like a good thing to, you know, hold people accountable for their actions and have people face consequences for their actions, but to like hold someone in that place forever is only going to ensure that they continue to be a criminal. Do what you're doing in California, deprive community of resources as punishment. Treating someone like a baby has its place to an extent. Like there's the one that I was talking about, the Australian rehab center that I wanted to get into potentially a little bit later, is a bit of a longer documentary. It's called Shalom House. I actually don't know whether it has anything to do with Jewish religion or anything like that. It didn't really seem to have any, I don't know. But it is called Shalom House, and they sort of talk about how at the start of the program you have like very little right to make decisions for yourself, but they kind of build it up and they do focus consistently the whole way along on this, you know, getting people to build up better relationships, getting people to, you know, find pro-social and gainful employment, like getting people down more positive paths. And they're they're quite strict on it. Like if you are not invested in making rehabilitation work for you, like you are generally asked to leave the program. I think it is private, and I think you do have to pay for it, but I think it's like more affordable than, so like it's not $100,000 a month. So we're talking about bad people who didn't know how to deal with it. Now look at us. I will always advocate that people are typically better than their crimes. We're all guilty of something we believe in a common good. Perhaps I have a personal stake in the belief of someone who got a second chance. But having a little bit of understanding and the willingness to help someone can go a long way. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's like... This is what I'm talking about, is like, yeah, absolutely. You need to give people a second chance. And there are a lot of people that are going to bite the hand that feeds them, and they're going to like, they're going to fuck you over. I cue a commercial break from Twitch. Sorry. Being honest and open was the toughest thing, but it was the most necessary thing. Right. Take away stores and vital infrastructure, suffocate them. The problem will take care of itself. Yeah, they'll just die out, right? That's fantastic. I was a very, very bad person, like a villain due to trauma. But if you were continually treated as if you're still that person, like, would it really make you want to be anybody else? Like, I just feel like if you're forever going to be treated in a certain way, it's like, you know, why would I want to get better if like the world's just going to see me like this anyways? If people are just going to see me like, oh, I'm you know, a person that committed this crime at this point in my life when I had these situations happening in this context, and I put in the effort to be a better person, but people now have public access to my, you know, my police record. board, and are, you know, able to make really, I don't know, quick judgments on who they think I am, despite potentially putting in a lot of work to be different. And that's not true for every criminal. I understand that, but also understand that our system doesn't exactly make it so that people want to do that. And that, I think, is where the core issue lies. And I don't think that there is zero responsibility to the government or to us as a society to help people who are in these positions. I think that it is important, as you know, as repulsive as it can even feel at times, to like want to help people that are going through these kind of situations. I don't think that that's the right attitude to just turn away, because the only thing that's going to do is end up with an overcrowded prison system. It's going to end up with a backlog in our criminal justice system. It's going to end up costing more for taxpayers as well. There is like so much more pressure that is put on taxpayers because of this backlog. So things like drug court actually help in terms of the rehabilitative, help in terms of saving money and putting that money towards like better programs that like can help people be pro-social. You're not just saving money through the criminal justice system as well, but you also have more people who are able to, you know, move forward and participate in gainful pro-social lives. And that means that they're paying taxes, they're participating in society, they're participating in the economy. They are not doing those things if they are in prison. They're not doing those things if they're in a halfway house trying to get back to prison. You know what I mean? So there's like, I think there needs to be a lot more of a careful and thoughtful approach to this kind of discussion and to like how we deal with this, you know, as a society, than just being like straight up, you know, oh, you know, people's public fucking, you know, their police records should be public and we should be able to judge them for these sorts of things. Or like, you know, people shouldn't have these opportunities to do better because they've like, you know, taken that opportunity away from themselves for doing whatever they did. All right, so we'll get into the hardcore one and then we'll go into less hardcore ones.
There were times where I was tied with both hands to the bedpost like this.
Don't you have the dinosaur?
And both legs. I'm naked. And he would inject me with either heroin or he would put a crack pipe to my mouth.
I forgot it gets into it very quickly.
I was only 19 and I was just no longer a human being. I was property.
I come back to, yeah, this one's very intense.
The rehab capital of America. It begins with Simone, a 23-year-old addicted to heroin and crack cocaine who's been bought and sold by fraudulent halfway homes and drug treatment centers across the state.
In 3 years, I've been to 45 halfway houses, what we call flop houses.
Simone is one of thousands caught in a corrupt system of recovery facilities that illegally make millions from addicts' insurance policies. So, who are the people buying and selling addicts?
Imagine staying sober. That shit is so sad. It's like a dream. That it's a not a very nice dream.
They call them body snatchers or junkie hunters, and many of these hunters are after something much darker.
Yeah, so this is like some of the more, I guess, abusive aspects of the privatization of, you know, medical treatments, which, you know, rehab is a medical treatment. Addiction is a medical condition. They do, I believe, treat it as a medical condition. Hey, Riza, how you doing? Draining her insurance until she gets out of so she ages out of her parents' insurance plan. They just leave her to rot and die.
I've been
essentially.
Since 1979.
That's Ted Paddock. He's the lead investigator on the Sober Home Task Force in Palm Beach County.
I've lived through the cocaine cowboys. I've lived through the crack epidemic.
Cocaine cowboys.
Thought that I'd be involved in something as terrible as this. Well, like any big scam, you follow the money. In this instance, it centers around urine samples.
So why urine samples? Well, to understand it, we need to go back to the Affordable Health Care Act and the Parity Act, which in 2010 required insurance policies to cover substance abuse.
After all the votes have been tallied, health insurance reform becomes law in the United States of America.
Providing health insurance coverage to treat addiction is necessary, but without regulation, scam artists are taking advantage of the system by running excessive and unnecessary tests, namely urine analysis.
Only a good thing,
yeah. For a single $30 store-bought urine test, you could get up to $1,500 in payouts from insurance companies. So let's do the math. If you run 5
How the
tests
fuck
a
that
week on a
works?
single addict, that's $7,500. 6 addicts at 5 tests a week, $45,000. That's over $2.3 million a year. And the numbers.
And that's just looking at 6, like, hypothetical people, like hypothetical addicts. Clearly, or obviously, this is a much larger scale, and there's a much broader range. Sell my piss less than that. A good business model.
Going up. And even
Gamer
after
girl
insurance
piss.
companies started to catch on, these treatment centers would find other things to charge for. STD checks, massage therapy, pregnancy tests, and even DNA testing. And there you have it, an illegal money-making operation with multi-million-dollar potential, all based on how many addicts you have and how often they pee.
Damn, those addicts must be so hydrated, though.
That explains the insurance fraud. But there's another layer to the scam. Simone was at an AA meeting in New Jersey when she was approached.
I was desperate, and you could tell I sat in the back of the room.
Dude, tea?
And
For
this
real,
woman
though.
approached me.
Shit makes you pee like nothing
And I
else.
told her I can't keep a needle out of my arm. And I'm 19 years old. The first question she asked me is if I had health insurance. And she gave me the information to this treatment center. Within 48 hours, I was on a plane.
So why would a treatment center pay for a free flight to Florida? This is where the body snatchers come in. These are people paid by the treatment centers and sober homes to bring in more addicts.
These kids are being treated as a commodity, not dissimilar from
What were you joking about?
They can be marketers on the internet.
What were you joking about, Trickster?
Or snatchers on the ground, hunting for
Hey,
addicts
crabs.
in AA meetings or at local coffee shops.
Oh, drink water.
several thousands of sober homes.
Still gonna do it.
They're largely unregulated.
And the hub of all this? Delray Beach.
Hey, good points for that shit.
This past year, I
They're
stayed
trying
at
to grow
the
a bear.
House on Swinton Ave in Delray Beach. I stayed there for over 5.5 months, smoking crack and shooting heroin every
Either
single
way.
day, and they just ran my insurance. My mother still receives bills.
Simone's mother showed me stacks of actual bills from these flop houses, showing up to 5-year in
Probably
custody
illegal in
and
Australia.
charging
Damn.
for insurance over $115,000
I want a cocaine bear, though.
for a 5-month period.
If you have a good insurance program, you're a gold mine. What we call body snatchers, they are preying on the most vulnerable people there are. And they will lure them with cash, with gym
Build-A-Bear?
memberships, drugs. To further complicate it, each relapse, those insurance benefits start anew.
And flop houses will actually...
So if the insurance benefits start anew when people relapse and people are making, you know, tens of thousands of dollars from people who are addicted to drugs, I'm sure they wouldn't abuse that. I'm sure that's just like completely fine.
Just to
Oh,
restart.
they pay you to relapse? Okay, no, never mind. They will abuse that system. Fuck. Okay, never mind. See? Guess I shouldn't see the best in people. Jesus Christ. I'm curious the insurance companies didn't fight back and the insurers getting pretty tough on denying claims. I think... I'm not too sure. I don't think they really go into that as much.
Start your benefits.
Foster a cub and treat it well, it'll eat them
When
later.
I was struggling, I would, you know, make a Facebook status or something, like, I need help, I'm gonna die, I'm scared. And I would have people reach out to me and just be like, listen, you go to this treatment center, I'll give you a little bit of money.
Zoe was first given opioids at a hospital when her appendix was taken out at the age
So,
of 8.
this is what I was talking about before. This is one of the cases I was talking about before, that like people are sometimes just given opiates or opioids, whatever, to, you know, treat some kind of whatever. So she had an appendix, you know, whatever, you know, back injuries, that sort of stuff. So they get prescribed it medically and then they become hooked. And I think like the prescription of like the giving, you know, pushing prescription medication is also a lot worse in America. So you're pretty much just like creating addicts where there doesn't necessarily need to be any.
And then after that, I kind of dabbled a little bit until my mom got diagnosed with cancer. She started getting Dilaudid. And I would army crawl into her bedroom, and I would just pour about 30 or 40 of them into my hand. I was 16, fully addicted to opiates. And I remember...
So I think this is like...
I was laying on the couch, and my dad came home early from work. He said, Zoe, you want to go see your mom today? We don't think she's going to make it through the night. I just was like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm going to stay here. I was high.
That's
He came
really
home
sad.
later that night, and he said, your mom died. The next day, I went and used heroin for the first time.
Like Simone, Zoe was lured to Florida by a marketer who profited from her referral. But the story gets more complicated. Addicts who were lured in become more than commodities for their health insurance policies. Many women become trapped in a sex trafficking scheme that cushions the profit of some of these owners.
So this is the area that I was in.
This is okay. So just to prepare everybody, this is where it starts to get quite intense in terms of touching on the sex trafficking aspect of this. Been around strong doses of opiates because of family. The thought crossed my mind what it'd be like to take them, but the thought of the consequences came quickly after. And some people are in situations where it's like, you know, like that kind of thing, where it's like the consequences aren't necessarily registering as much because just feeling that high or feeling that you get with drugs is just very enticing. I got codeine and I had my tonsils removed and it did nothing for me. It's a very low dose, but yeah, no pain relief at all. True. All right, we're good.
The area that I was in, and this is Northwest 13th, where I was. I haven't been back here in a while.
Seemed like jumping in the deep end, yeah, a little bit.
This is the park. I tried to hang myself there. My mother tried to pull me out of that house. And they didn't know that I couldn't leave for two reasons. Not only am I hooked to crack cocaine, but I am somebody's property, and I cannot leave.
With help from her parents, Simone escaped from that flop house and is now a student at Palm Beach State College.
Good on you,
She
Simone.
says her classmates have no idea that she's one of thousands of women and men lost in what they call the Florida Shuffle.
We're about to go to the Motel 6. It's great for trafficking because the highway is right there.
So fucked up.
When women come down here, they do in fact become sort of the property and a commodity that's to be traded. It's like a hellhole where they end up powerless, no options, in the hands of people who are going to trade them. There are girls that are 12, 13 years old.
We hear
Very more complications. Some insurers have monopolies, duopolies in areas, plus people get insurance through employers who don't choose, even hospitals in the graft. So paying out of pocket is not possible due to insane prices. And like these euphemisms, flophouse or Florida Shuffle, takes away the seriousness of the crime. Yeah, I guess it does kind of put it in a slightly more lighthearted tone, but I think like it's like a, you know, the flophouse is like, you know, kind of pointing out that it's like a bit of a flop, like the entire concept. And the Florida Shuffle, like, yeah, again, it's like it's not the most, it doesn't give a good indication as to the severity of what's going on here, but yeah.
that they're being passed around, groups of girls that are moved from place to place, treated like chattel.
I think that's why they call it the
Authorities
shuffle.
have made over 30 arrests in just the last year. The most infamous of these cases was that of Kenny Chapman, who pled guilty to multiple counts of money laundering, insurance fraud, and sex trafficking. Susan has represented some of his victims.
So he would actually market them in houses of prostitution. He was also giving them drugs to have them relapse so they could go to a higher level of care and he would make a higher profit.
So again, like if you, when we think about like, you know, rehab doesn't work, we have to remember that there are also instances like this, and halfway houses and things like that are, you know, notoriously ineffective and notoriously effective for making sure that criminals stay criminals. Like that's even the case in Australia. When people get out of prison and they don't necessarily have a home to go to, they'll go to like halfway houses, and you're basically just in an environment where you have access to drugs. You're in an environment where people are wanting to do drugs, and like you're basically surrounded by, you know, criminal connections, by people who are in the same situation as you, who are suffering in a lot of ways like you, and who are going to enable drug usage or crime or whatever else. So it's like you're pretty much just taking someone from a bad situation and then like, or like taking them from prison and then putting them in an environment that, you know, basically ensures that they go back to prison. And like, I don't know, you know, what people's experiences are with seeing halfway houses. I have seen like a couple in Brisbane and seen like, you know, the people that come in and out of there. And it's just, it's like, it's clearly not fucking helping anything.
He had the houses so that they were not only able to be locked on the inside, they were able to be locked on the outside. The windows had locks on them. If we did something that he didn't like, he'd lock you in a room, or he'd sell you for dirt cheap. He would let you know that 4 people just ran through you for $20. He would let you know that 4 men just ran a train on you for $20. He'd let you know, and he'd let you sit there and think about that. wouldn't even get you high. Because now you want to get high just to be numb. Just to not feel, to not think. I sat in a bathtub and filled it with scorching hot water and a gallon of bleach. And I sat there just scrubbing. Because I wanted it to get off. I wanted it to just go away. It didn't.
There's an ad break, which is like great timing for that. I wasn't really sure whether I watched this video because of that. And it's like, it is very intense, it is very visceral, it is very horrible. But I think for the purposes of educating, obviously there's a lot of different aspects to the failure of the criminal justice system and to the failure of rehab, but I thought it was really important to touch on, you know, situations like this too, to remind people that, you know, I think in society, people tend to treat criminals, you know, like we think about the tough on crime approaches and the tough on crime policies, you know, which are across the world. And I think that people tend to treat people who they see as addicts and criminals with this kind of mental, you know, feeling, this idea, you know, it's like, oh, you know, they're sketchy, they're bad. And I think that there is a sense of dehumanization in that process, where you stop recognizing that the person that is going through this experience, the person that is going through this is a human being and they are really struggling. And that there are people who are willing to take advantage of that and abuse that to the fullest extent. You know, I spent a lot of time like already, you know, being invested in this kind of topic, and I've already done a lot of research on this topic. I do always feel like I learn quite a bit, you know, from these kind of things. I had a lot of fun doing this discussion. Again, just going to repeat myself a whole bunch in this wind down because that's where my brain is at. But yeah, this is a very fun topic for me. It's like, it is a bit of a dark topic. It is a bit of an intense topic, and it is a bit of a, you know, bit of pushback here and there. But, you know, it is very interesting when you actually start to get into it, and it's, you know, good to start to understand where people come from on things, or maybe start to get a broader perspective on how we can deal with these problems. I think it's very easy to be like, well, let's just be tough on crime. Let's just block people up for being shit. Like, let's just put more and more stringent, you know, consequences on them. Let's put more punitive measures on them. But realistically, this creates like a backlog of criminals that are just not able to participate in broader society, and you're just worsening the problem over time for people. It also creates bigger problems for average citizens that are then going to have to face the repercussions of people who are acting violently or who are acting out of their drug addiction in ways that are, you know, harmful to broader society. So there's a lot of reasons to be invested in rehabilitation. There's a lot of reasons to be invested in rehabilitative structures such as drug court. It's good to have a good understanding and awareness about these kind of subjects. Because again, like these kind of situations do affect a lot of people, and they do affect, like you look at America, the prison system in America, even in Australia. Like I said at the beginning of stream, Australia has a prison population of about 110% capacity.